Okay, so the way to manage the SRA Specific Skills Guidelines for lessons in the following books listed: mechanics, sentences, spelling, grammar, paragraphs, writing process, and research. First of all, you need to make sure that you read the to the teacher and to the student pages. That's going to give you all the necessary information for the particular lessons in those books and what they focus on. To the teacher section actually associates the book level A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H to grade level, grade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It also tells you how to work through or flow through the book, or how the book flows. It's probably a better way of saying that, because we have certain books, specifically just the research one, that's going to require internet access. So to do some of the lessons or units within that book, you're going to need that access, and to use your own judgment the best that you see fit. Here is the breakdown on how the levels work, what I had just mentioned. Your primary set, obviously levels A through D, middle set C through F, upper elementary E through H, and complete elementary sets A through F. Now this doesn't really mean much, because each individual book is going to have the grade level in its association to the book level. So you just have to make sure that you read the to the teacher section and to the student section to identify grade level. And you can obviously, the to the student page, when we get to that page on the next slide, you're going to notice that they're going to lay out the information the way that a teacher would present it onto the board in class. So they're going to have the modeling, so there's going to be a lesson written out, the modeling, so there might be a visual that has some labeling, arrows pointing, bolded words, italics, underlining, quotation marks, things like that, to help students identify what the information provided in the lesson is going to do. Also, at the very end of that particular page, it's going to give you the learning goal. But the to the teacher is obviously going to show you how the lessons are meant to be taught or reviewed, because there's activity pages. Now when we get into the teacher and to the student pages, I've gone ahead and I have put in and scanned in the sample pages. This is from Sentences Book C. So we have our to the teacher page. There are 2 pages. You do not have to read if you have multiple children in different grade levels. So say you want to do Sentences Book C, D, and E. You don't have to read this page all 3 times. This page is the general information. It's going to be exactly as it is, worded exactly the way it will be, the flow of the work. This section here is going to be, for the most part, exactly the same. Actually, I think both of these pages are going to be identical for the sentences, so you really only have to read this one time. Your to the student page, however, is going to be completely different for each book, and it's going to, like I said, it's going to have your visual, it's going to provide you with arrows, and it'll say you will learn. And I don't know if you have been into your student's classroom, but usually on the board it'll say learning goal, objective, and things of that nature, so that students can focus on or have an idea of what the lesson is about to help the students focus. Here we have an overview. So these bullet points show an overview of what the book is going to cover. So here's the outline. And then of course at the very bottom It's telling the student whether or not a sentence is complete and correctly punctuated. So we're going to know what complete sentences are along with punctuation. And you also know how to improve your own sentences. So this means that beyond the scope of the work and learning how to write the sentence, they're expecting the expectation for the student to apply this to beyond the book is expected. So there you can kind of have an idea of the overarching goal for the child by the end of this book. So that means you can go ahead and start introducing free writing and make sure that your child or your student is identifying the proper way to put words in a logical order to make a complete statement. Now, the pages are they're streamlined, they're very easy to follow. It's one of the things I love about this book. I've used this it does go up to 6th grade, which is like the beginning of your middle schoolers, but I've actually used these books for middle school and high school students because the way that they break down the information, especially since they give you what is being done building a sentence. So this I know is going to be talking about the structure of a sentence in general. So this is helpful in identifying that. So if a student is having problems with certain components of a sentence, identifying where to put a comma, if they are writing a run-on sentence or not. So this book is very good, or these books are very good about isolating the skills into smaller bite-sized pieces. So the first thing that you want to do, so the way to interact with this particular book or these particular specific skills books is you're always going to be writing. So this is a component for reading and writing. The notes need to be copied exactly as they are. Get creative if you need to, because I've had students on a separate sheet of paper, writing in pencil, it's great and wonderful, but change it up a bit. I tutor kids after they've spent 5 or 6 hours in school and then extracurricular activities and what have you. So it's really important to try to change this up and make it a little bit more dynamic and separate from the learning environment that they're used to having. We're already in that predicament anyways because of COVID-19, but here have them use markers on construction paper if you need to. Have them, instead of using regular notebook paper, you can have colored notebook paper. But you want to have the notes at the top of the page for referencing. So as a reference to what you're doing, your student and your kids are going to need to look at these examples and apply it to the work that's expected down below. Part 2 is obviously reading the directions. Yes, I actually have to put that in there, and I always have to remind students because they hop into the work and they think that they know what they're doing. And usually they're correct, but there are times where they think that they know what they're doing and it's completely wrong and off base of what they're supposed to be doing. So it's very important that reading the directions out loud so that you know what they're supposed to be doing, they know what they're supposed to be doing. Anytime that you're reading in these books, I find it very important to read out loud. It's much easier to just, number one, parents can see that the students are doing the work, and also if they're having any kind of reading obstacles. So if there are certain letter combinations or phonetic issues that might be happening, you can easily identify, oh, okay, I need to make sure that I keep an eye that whenever I see them read these words or words with this particular ending, that they're not switching things around or that they're slowing down and reading it. And I always tell for the younger students, when you use your finger and you're following the words, they should not be reading beyond their finger. The words that they're reading need to match up exactly where the finger is pointed. So if I'm reading this sentence, which main noun or pronoun, I've already gone past where I'm supposed to be reading. So I should be saying which main noun or pronoun and main verb best complete each sentence. So it needs to follow along, and if you need to use a finger to identify the speed of the reading, that's always good, because you know that your child will not need the finger to follow if they are reading fluently, so they're not making any reading mistakes as they're following their finger, and you gradually increase the speed. So you want to see if they can read a sentence without their finger to follow, to identify their speed and fluency. Step 3, you're going to complete the first 2 questions with the student. In this particular exercise, 1 and 2 is 1 sentence. That counts as 1 question. 3 and 4 count as the second one. So how you approach this is you do the first one with them and you say, okay, so blank might blank this news surprising. When you have blanks, you need to read them as blanks, just so that you are representing a word that might be there. So you need to be verbally expressing that a word belongs in these spaces. So the first thing that you need to know, this is book C, so this is going to be 3rd grade. Your student in 3rd grade should know what a noun, a pronoun, or verb is. But most importantly, what they're actually showing here is the beginning of a sentence should start with a capital letter. So let them know they need to use these particular clues to help them get to your answer. So right now we've eliminated 2 options, A and D, because B and C are capitalized, so either one of those are going to be the best answers to place in the first slot. So we have cups or you. So you go ahead and you read one at a time. Cups might blank this news surprising. You might blank this news surprising. Okay, well that's not helpful. We need to know what is going to coordinate with these 2 subjects. So cups can either go with find or break. Well, since verbs are the actions that the subject takes, we need to make the connection. Can cups find things? Unless you're on Beauty and the Beast and you're a chip, maybe, but we're not. So we have cups break, and we're going to place break there to see if that makes sense, because that word pair is the only pair that can't go any other way. Cups might break this news surprising. Well, cups breaking news is not necessarily something that's really going to happen. So let's try you and find. You and break also works, but because we already use breaks with cups, I want to choose the option that hasn't been used yet. You might find this news surprising. Well, that works. But we can always double check. Always check your options. We always tell our students to use all the options and make the one that makes and choose the one that makes the most sense. You might break the news surprising. So you might find the news surprising makes sense. Your subject is you, your verb is find. When you have your student write this sentence, it's up to you whether or not you want them to use a line, a blank when they're writing, and then write and leave that space, and then might, and then leave another space, and then finish writing the sentence this way. I personally tell students that we should wait to fill in the blanks to find our answers. So then when they write the sentence out, there isn't too much space between letters, because spacing between words in a sentence is also a skill set. It's not taught really in depth over time. They just expect from kindergarten to first grade, when you're learning how to space your words, and they have students put the fingers between the words to write them. It kind of goes out the window sometimes when they become more fluent in their reading. They may not necessarily spend that time with the writing, or teachers may expect this to be normal because when you're reading, you see the spacing and you're able to match what you're seeing with what you're doing. So then we go to our second question, or second sentence, and you do the same thing. A blank, sometimes blank, a forest. So here I would highly suggest, if you are seeing that your child or student grasps this rather quickly, then let them fill in the blanks themselves. And you obviously are going to tell them whether or not they're right or wrong, but whether they're right or wrong, have them explain why they're putting the words in the order in which they're doing that. Okay, so what you're looking for is from to say, well, I know that a noun is a person, place, or thing, and I know that a verb is an action or something that people do. So rain, when it rains, that's an action, that's not a noun. And helps, when you're helping someone, that's a verb. So I know that C and D are my two verbs, and that would mean A and B are going to be my nouns. So fire and it. Now, if you look up here at your examples, or the rules, I should say, this is the rule that's being taught. Look at it is a pronoun. It's not a noun. So in the first sentence here, you could say, well, a pronoun is not going to be a noun, a person, place, or thing directly. So this is a little bit more challenging. That's why I didn't want to use it in the first sentence. Cups, we know, is a noun. We know that this is something you can hold and fill and everything. You is a pronoun because it's not specifically naming the person by name. So this would be since it's a second person, we would count it as a step down, or the second step down from a noun. So our pronoun would be you. So that's another way that you can easily identify your pronoun from nouns. And if your child understands that, fantastic. If not, that's something that you can show them. Here, I know that the first one, A, is definitely going to go, I don't even have to read the sentence because it is a pronoun. Fire is a noun. And then verb would be helps. Fire doesn't rain. Does that make sense? So then as you progress on to the rest of the lesson, you're going to see that. Now I put an asterisk here because normally when I teach from these books, there are placement tests that are associated with this that identify what level your student would need to start at. But since you already know what child your grade is in, it's up to you. You can start them at grade level, or you can start them below grade level. If I have those books available, as I mentioned, I only have books C through F. So there's going to be a limitation as far as access to those particular books. That doesn't mean that this information is not necessary. These notes and the examples are priceless. I've had to use these on several occasions, like I said, for middle and high schoolers. And I've even had to use these to help with students who are taking the SAT or ACT, because they have components where they have to look at a paragraph and identify punctuation, or if they're placing the sentence in the right place, like moving a sentence, this sentence would best be placed before or after sentence 6, 3, 5, or 2. So you have to really understand the dynamics of making sentences in a manner in which they form paragraphs that are logical. So you really have to look at the wording and the way that they have the words placed in the sentence. And then we actually have, in the next slide, is the lapse. So this book is broken into 4 separate sections. They do go in chronological order, so once they do the first, 1, 2, or 3 units, usually it's 2 or 3, sometimes it's 4, there is a language activity page. So it goes A, B, C, and D. These are the things it's looking for. So your exercise, so this is key terms and concepts for A. B is going to be expanding, so you're going to be doing mixed practice. So here we're going to be like completing a sentence. They'll give you part of a sentence and then you have to complete it. Then they give you a full-on paragraph. The paragraph with a word box. So that way it's a limited, so we want this activity to not take forever to do. That's why we have the word box there. The next thing that you want to think about is identifying in the sentence. So you're going to look sentence by sentence. Even though it's in a paragraph form, we want to look one sentence at a time. What's missing? A noun, a verb, an adjective, a pronoun. What is it that's missing? And then from there, you're going to identify in the word box which one of those parts of speech belong to the word box. Okay, so if Tim is a noun and noun is a missing here, then that's going to be Tim, if that's the only noun. Okay, so that helps to narrow down the options. D, expressing yourself. So expressing, this is our creative component to this. They're always going to give you an activity that is a group work or like a partner work kind of thing. A lot of these are manageable and could be manageable at home. And I really like this one where it says you're going to, and this could be a fun activity. Now, there's nothing here saying this isn't homework. You don't have to do this in pencil. You can do this in color pencils, you can do this in markers, you can do this in crayons, anything to kind of make things stick out, especially if you're going to be identifying nouns from verbs. Picking a color for nouns and picking a color for verbs is excellent. That's one way of making a little bit more sense of the information and providing another visual representation that is used by your child, used by your student. So, and this second one is a poem. So this gives a little bit more connection to your creative writing elements, because even in language arts and your 4 disciplines, they have to connect it to another discipline and or art in some way, shape, or form. Now, the last part of this that I did was I scanned this in to create a overview of the entire sentences scope and sequence. So all the books from level A to H are broken down here by the units, but look at what they also help to do. They kind of show you what the emphasis is. So as you can see, up until F, building a sentence is still the main priority. So think about it, from 1st through 5th grade, or 6th grade, my apologies, that's going to be the most heavy loaded part. Just being able to write a good sentence. Not sure what just happened there. So when you look at the scope and sequence, you want to make sure that wherever your levels are, you keep an eye out on what's going on within each one. So you can look at yourself as just a visual representation. After you've read to the teacher and to the student, you can see how a little bit better how the overview of what you're supposed to be learning, how it works out for the entire specific skill. Again, this is the instructions or the suggested, highly suggested manner in which these specific skills in the SRA program should be used. Now, I am scanning these in page by page, so it's taking a little bit more time than I intended because it's time consuming altogether. especially if the scans don't come out right. You have to start over basically. So if you have any questions, by all means, leave comments. I'm going to be posting this on Facebook first before YouTube, because YouTube takes like 2 hours for 10-minute videos. And that will be on the KC Kite site.